Welcome to Civics in a Year, the podcast that makes civic literacy fast, accessible, and surprisingly engaging. In just 10 minutes an episode, we'll tackle one of 250 essential questions about American democracy, how it works, why it matters, and what it means for you. Whether you're a student, a teacher, or just someone who wants to better understand your country and your rights, you're in the right place. Civics in a Year is powered by the Civic Literacy Curriculum from the Center for American Civics and is produced in partnership with the School of Civic and Economic Thought and Leadership at Arizona State University.
Welcome back to Civics in a Year. Today we're talking about a man who's never president, but is somebody who, our guest, Dr. Sean Beienberg, really is fascinated by. Today we're talking about Huey Long and Every Man is a King. So, Professor Beienberg, who is Huey Long? And is Every Man a King? Is that a song? Is it a book? Is it a speech? Like, what is this?
It's a combination of a sort of a speech and a radio address. It's one of his pamphlets. It's sort of the Every Man a King and Share Our Wealth are sort of the two sort of pull phrases that are in a lot of his materials. So I've been looking forward to this one for a long, long time. I love talking about Huey Long. There's a class that I used to teach where I did an entire day on him. And I don't know if I'm going to teach that class anymore. And I have it filed away that whoever ends up teaching that class, I will beg to guest lecture the Huey Long Day. I think he is by far the most interesting person in American political history. Not my favorite necessarily, but I think the most interesting, which is why he is loosely fictionalized in All the King's Men by Robert Penn Warren, which I think is the best book about American politics ever written. It's not like a political science piece, but in terms of thinking about what actually being in politics is like and what it does to people. So highly, highly, highly recommended. I was delighted. I got an email from a former student a couple days ago saying, I finally read All the King's Men. It was just as great as he said. So my day has been made. So I'm going to be in Huey Long nerd mode. So Long comes out of basically rural Louisiana politics. And he very much has this incredibly folksy persona. And you could read his speeches and you can listen to some of them. In fact, I would encourage people after this, just find out one of the recordings of one of his speeches. They're like 3 or 4 minutes long.
They're easily, I have tons of them up right now.
Yeah, you can listen to him and just listen to his cadence and how persuasive he is. You know, he is clearly somebody that comes from a sort of really good preaching Protestant tradition where he's just used to a particular kind of cadence and delivery that is going to be incredibly compelling to his listeners. But he's basically a small town lawyer that kind of moves up in some ways and eventually gets himself elected governor of Louisiana. Largely because Louisiana at the time is effectively a feudal state where feudalism, not feudal failing, where a few big industries just utterly dominated. So oil and sugar and whatnot. And effectively, those kind of almost barren factions fight with each other one time. And they tear each other down, and Long is able to sneak through and be governor. And Long builds this incredibly effective regime of, particularly, there's almost no bridges in Louisiana at the time. Now, I don't know how much time you've ever spent driving through it. If you ever
I've never been to Louisiana. I'm sorry, I haven't been to Louisiana yet.
Okay. It's very striking where there's lots of little bridges connecting lots of over swamps and whatnot. And you imagine a universe where you didn't have that. You had to basically get on a ferry to go. Imagine you had to pay a toll every time you drove from Tempe across the Salt River, right? To try to of course you're going to be poor.
Yes.
So Long builds this regime of really aggressive taxation, primarily for infrastructure and education spending. So that seems like it's popular and good, and he does a good job in some sense of that. Long is regarded as one of the most cognitively brilliant people to ever be in politics. And so he combines this just like absolute genius level of command of detail with, again, this real folksy, like, brothers, who's my, tell me about how your problems are. And he knows everybody. And so you can read these accounts. The journalist, The Nation, sends a person to basically come and investigate this. And the piece is fascinating because he just says, like, Long is terrifying because Long is so brilliant and he's so effective. And he gets these amazing quotes from people saying, I don't really care about democracy or constitutionalism if the choice is that or Huey Long. I want Huey Long.
Wow.
And Long is able to build an utterly terrifying political machine of every time you work for him, you give him an undated resignation letter. He turns the police force into basically his own army. He basically dominates all elections, and he utterly dominates separation of powers. When he becomes senator, so he becomes U.S. senator, and he still is basically de facto governor. He has a guy named Oscar Allen, who they all call OK Allen because they say that all he does whenever Huey Long tells him something is okay. Literally, when Long comes back to Louisiana, Allen will leave like the governor's rooms and let like Long basically have them back. So he's running the state basically as senator and running the state when he becomes U.S. senator. But running the state is literal. Like, there is no meaningful separation of powers. If you go and read these old Nation articles, they talk about the legislature meeting, and literally the only witness will just be Governor Long will walk in and sit down, and he'll be like, Senate Bill 1, I like this one. Senate Bill 2, I don't like this one. Senate Bill 3, this one could use this change. And that's like the entirety of the debate. They don't. He has them so utterly that he has effectively, he leaves like 3 or 4 just sort of like nominal opponents almost for his amusement, but he is utter domination over that. There is no meaningful separation of powers. And he has one of my favorite quotes, again, not that I'm endorsing the sentiment. At some point, a state legislator picks up the Louisiana Constitution and says, what you're doing is illegal. You can't do this. Have you ever heard of this book? And Long says, I am the Constitution now. Like, what a power move.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, and so Long, yeah, and so he just utterly destroys all of his political opponents. Like, you can't oppose him. And so it's this fascinating case study of, lots of Americans will say, like, look, we don't want communism because you look like North Korea, right? And I don't think that, but Long is a fascinating case study of, he actually does quite a bit of good for the people. Like, they have working bridges. Their school system is a lot better. On the other hand, the tax rates are so unsustainable that they basically, the state collapses a couple of years afterward, and there's no meaningful political freedom. You cannot oppose him. He will have you destroyed. He will have you slandered. He will have you chased out of your judgeships. Like, he governs that state as a monarch to the point where there are people who are begging the Roosevelt administration. Right. Article 4 says that every state will have a Republican form of government, and the United States government will guarantee that. And they say, we are no longer have a republic in Louisiana. We have a dictatorship of Huey Long. And the Roosevelt administration is actually struggling with what to do about this for a while because Long is becoming so powerful. And so this connects to his speeches. And so he gives, again, there are variations of it, but it's every man a king or share the wealth. But he basically goes around creating, and he's brilliant too because he makes it a marketing campaign where he says, if you like my speech, get 5 of your friends and get them to, like, it's almost like multi-level marketing that he gets them all to buy into this. And he's building these little societies where he gets more mail than every other member of the United States Senate combined when he's in the Senate. I mean, he's just dominating the politics. And again, I want to go back to how brilliant he is. Right. There are like speeches where he says, like, oh, I don't know what the 10th Amendment is. Right. As he does this like sort of cornpone thing. And yet I think at least 3 members of the Supreme Court said he was the most brilliant lawyer to ever to ever interact with them. Like the best briefs, like the best command of all precedent. He has a challenge with another senator at some point of who can recite more of the Bible or Shakespeare. And they just get bored. Like Long he's just going for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. Like, again, just like utterly brilliant. Yeah. When there's a bank failure during the Depression, he says, all right, I'm going to go scare up some money from my friends to sort of back the bank so there's not a bank run. He leaves his bodyguard there, has the bodyguard pull out his gun and point it at the leaders of all the banks that he's assembled in the room and says, anybody moves, you kill him. Like, so.
Oh, okay.
So Long is serious business. And so his sort of political campaign is effectively that he wants to create really aggressive wealth caps. And so he'll go give the speeches and say, brothers, how many of you own like, 4 suits? And like two of them will raise, a few of them will raise their hand. How many own 3 suits, 2 suits, 1 suit? And most of them raise their hands like, how many of you don't own any suit? And then he says, those evil people in Wall Street own a whole bunch of suits, more suits than they ever can have. So like, we're going to take it from him. So he says effectively, we have 3 choices in America. We have communism, where it's like an actual military, dictatorship of sorts, feudalism, or my sort of really aggressive redistribution system. And so he says effectively, if we take all the money from all the rich people, we can basically give everybody whatever. And economists at the time, even friendly progressive economists, say like, no, like the math doesn't remotely work. You have to have middle class taxes to subsidize this level of redistribution. You can't just pick it from like the 10 people who have money in America. But Long doesn't care because he's not interested in the economics of this. He's interested in basically the sort of political rhetoric and persuasive and sort of rhetorical appeal of it. And he's planning in 36 to run a third party push against Roosevelt, who he thinks is too conservative. So because Roosevelt views himself as getting hammered from the left by Long and from the right by actually even most of the old Democrats, is what we'll talk about, or as we've talked about with Roosevelt. Mm-hmm. But Long is going to run in 36 a more or less like splinter campaign to make sure that Roosevelt loses and a conservative gets elected. And then his plan is that he'll take over the Democratic Party in 1940. And so like Roosevelt and his allies are terrified. This is going to be basically fascism in America with Long. And so do you know how Long's regime ends?
I do know that he is assassinated.
Well, he's killed.
Okay.
Assassinated this is like the one conspiracy theory I believe in. So a son or son-in-law of a judge whose political career Long has ruined comes and confronts him. Basically says like, this was an honest, faithful public servant and you destroyed him for crossing you. And the account is that this guy pulls a gun out and shoots Long. And this is in the Louisiana Capitol. You can stand in the hallway. You can stand in the hallway where he gets killed.
Oh, wow.
And Long's bodyguards shoot the guy to death. Now, Long survives for a couple of days. And Long says, why did he punch me? Not why did he shoot me? Why did he punch me? And you can go down a rabbit hole. This is about the only conspiracy theory I believe in, which is that like the gun doesn't match, the ballistics don't match. It seems like it is as likely or more likely that ricochets from the bodyguards popping the guy who punched him ricocheted out and killed Long. And then they covered it up. So that's like the one conspiracy theory I believe in, that if you go back and read it's like some of the ballistics and whatnot on this, like they don't match. They match the bodyguard's guns. The bodyguard's guns disappear. Occasionally there's, this is one I'm more skeptical of, but there's a couple accounts of like drunk bodyguards later lamenting what they had done. But anyway, Long gets killed and this sort of stops it. But Long is right before that happens. I mean, he's got Louisiana government passing laws to basically militarily eject federal officials if they come and interfere with him. I mean, he's like really playing around with he claims later, he's like, no, I don't mean it. But he literally has the Louisiana government pass an old school 1830s nullification law saying, if federal officials come, we will arrest them. We will use the force of Louisiana to arrest them. So Roosevelt views this as basically a great, great fortune that he doesn't have to either move against Long under the Republican clause or fear that Long is going to institute like national fascism. So yeah, Long is, I think, he is the closest we've ever come in the United States to some sort of totalitarian government. And so I tell him, this is why I teach him. because he shows, the appeal of that. I mean, there's quote after quote in these accounts of people saying, like, I don't care if I have democracy, I don't care if I have constitutionalism anymore. He basically made the trade. It's not he made the trades run, it's he built the roads.
Yeah.
But there is utter political tyranny, but partly done, and it's not in this sort of like scary military red armband waving thing. It's him just talking folksy and playing much dumber than he is. So he is, I think, one of a kind in American history, in terms of being just so utterly brilliant, so utterly ruthless, and so utterly vindictive. He famously says he keeps a son of a bitch book of anybody who's ever crossed him, that he will destroy them later in life. So,
Wow.
So yeah, Long is just super fun to learn about, and as somebody who likes constitutionalism, I am glad he did not succeed in nationalizing his regime.
It is interesting because, like as you're talking, I'm looking up things because, again, I love going on these deep dives. And this is like a random thing that he wrote the LSU fight song. He wrote that. But when you look at things, like when you look at a list of Huey Long's Louisiana programs, it looks amazing, right? Almost 10,000 miles of new roads, new toll-free bridges, free textbook, free schools, statewide busing, like just kind of this like really big thing. Do you think that Huey Long was successful because of the time period he was in and the state he was in?
Yeah, I mean, certainly the state. I mean, Louisiana, it is hard to overstate how economically backward it is at the time. It's really easy pickings for him to be able to do that. And, the state had been grossly mismanaged. So he's got that. Now, in some sense, him getting killed does him a favor because he doesn't have to pay the tax dues like on this kind of thing, right? So he gets to go down as like the great martyr who died giving the kids books and the roads, even though he's built up basically more or less a fascist regime that is financially unsustainable. And so it's in some sense it's one and done on that front. You mentioned the LSU thing. This goes back to his vengeance thing. So he gets really mad at one point that one of the universities there won't give him an honorary doctorate. And the honorary doctorate, to be clear, is because he says that he has written an annotated history of the Louisiana Constitution, which is a source that I used in my research. He had one of his staffers write it. The staffers were writing it, and he's like, yeah, I'm just taking that. This like actual long, complicated, annotated treatise of Louisiana history. He's like, yep, that's mine now. And they wouldn't give him whatever the honorary thing was. And so he spitefully, I think he moves like the dental school or something.
Medical school.
But he actually is the Louisiana thing. It gets to the point where he's basically calling plays while he's marching up and down the LSU games, where he's like calling plays and giving orders to the coach. So,
I think that there's a lot of people that, not just LSU, but just in general, but like reading a little bit about like his obsession with LSU. I don't know if that's the right thing, but he definitely expanded it and whatever else. But yeah, there is a picture I see from LSU Library Special Collection of Huey Long with the referees before a game. And I'm going to imagine that it was not a just checking in to see what's going on kind of conversation based on.
Or it might be a just checking in to see what's going on.
Wink, wink. Oh my gosh. It is, again, it's so interesting to think about like these sliding doors thing, right? You say that the end of his life was probably a good thing. But I also wonder, like, for American history, what it did. Because, again, if you just look at these things in face value, at the time, it was like, this is really great. However, it is this time period, right, where like the world is leaning into fascism. It's actually really scary.
Yeah, that's what the Nation guy, again, the Nation's a progressive journal, right? A journal at the time. They're going back there saying, you all say that Hitler can't happen here, Hitler will happen here. It's Huey Long. I mean, that's the very clear undercurrent of their reporting pieces saying, and they wander around the college campus. They say, what do you think of democracy? It's like, we don't care. We just want Huey Long.
So crazy.
So, yeah, I mean, this is when, Roosevelt is challenging the courts. So, I mean, the court packing scheme from Roosevelt is child's play compared to what Huey Long, which again, I'm very, very hostile to the court packing thing. So I don't mean to be dismissing that, but it is child's play compared to the kind of things that Huey Long had done in Louisiana and was aiming to do at the federal level if he got his paws on it. So it is like in some sense America's near miss with some, and Louisiana's not near miss. Louisiana got it.
Yeah. Wow. See,
so that's why Huey Long is interesting. Hopefully you're persuaded of that at least.
I am very persuaded that he is interesting because now I have like 6 tabs open because this is why I love American history because there's just so much more to the story. And yeah, I'm going to be doing some deep dives. And then really quickly, the book, All the King's Men, do you know the author? Because I was going to add it to my
Robert Penn Warren.
Adding that to my Goodreads.
It's long and it has a very slow start.
Okay.
It has a very, very, very slow start because they're trying to basically establish the sort of languid, nothing's happening in Louisiana thing. So you got to get in that mood because then it contrasts with just like what an absolute dynamo. The character's name is Willie Stark, but it's very clearly Huey Long.
Okay.
So be patient if you read it. It really is worth it.
Okay. Dr. Beienberg, thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Civics in a Year. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and share it with someone who cares about a constitutional republic as much as you do. For more episodes, resources, and updates, follow us on social media or visit us at civics.asu.edu. Make sure to check out the show notes for any relevant links. Special thanks to the United States Marine Band for their performance of the Stars and Stripes Forever. Let's keep building a stronger constitutional republic, one episode at a time.